The story of Las Poquianchis is one of the darkest chapters in Mexican criminal history, a true tale of exploitation, murder, and eventual ironic retribution that unfolded over decades in the mid-20th century. The four González Valenzuela sisters, María Delfina, María del Carmen, María Luisa, and María de Jesus, grew up in poverty in rural Jalisco, Mexico. Their father, Isidro Torres, was a strict and abusive man who ran a small business and enforced harsh rules on his daughters. In the 1930s, a violent incident shattered their lives. During a family argument or party dispute, Isidro shot and killed a man. Fearing the law, the family fled, scattering and struggling to survive in a post-revolutionary Mexico marked by economic hardship. The sisters turned to sex work to make ends meet, but ambition and resentment hardened them. By the 1940s, led by the eldest, Delfina, they began building a criminal network. They opened brothels under fancy names like La Barca de Oro, and later expanded to rural ranches such as Rancho Loma del Angel and El Angel in Guanajuato and Jalisco. They bribed local police, politicians, and officials generously, ensuring protection and impunity for years. Their operation was brutally efficient and sadistic. The sisters targeted vulnerable young women and girls, often teenagers as young as 12 to 14, from poor rural families. They lured them with false promises of legitimate jobs as maids, waitresses, or factory workers. Once the victims arrived, the doors locked and the nightmare began. The women were enslaved in compounds surrounded by electrified fences and guarded by thugs. They were forced into prostitution, beaten, starved, and sexually assaulted daily. If a woman became pregnant, the baby was typically killed, suffocated, drowned, or abandoned because a child represented lost earnings and a potential liability. Sick or worn-out women, those deemed too ill, too damaged, or no longer attractive to clients, were murdered to cut costs and prevent escapes. Bodies were buried in mass graves on the ranches, sometimes burned with kerosene or simply dumped. Survivors later described tortures like the cama reel, a barbed wire wrapped board that cut victims with every movement, or forced starvation and beatings. The sisters amassed significant wealth, properties, vehicles, fine clothes, while treating human lives as disposable. Estimates suggest hundreds of women passed through their brothels, with at least 91 confirmed deaths, though some sources claim the total exceeded 150 or even 200. Delfina was the ruthless leader, with the others complicit in the day-to-day horrors. María del Carmen, however, died of cancer in 1949 before the full scope of the crimes came to light. The empire collapsed in January 1964. A desperate victim named Catalina escaped from one of the ranches after brutal beatings. Near death and bloodied, she reached authorities in Leon, Guanajuato. Her report triggered raids. Police uncovered mass graves, torture rooms, chains, and dozens of survivors who corroborated the atrocities. 3 sisters, Delfina, María Luisa, and María de Jesus, were arrested. The trial in San Francisco del Rincon became a national sensation, with over 200 witnesses testifying to murders, human trafficking, and corruption of minors. In October 1964, Delfina and María de Jesus were each sentenced to the maximum 40 years in prison. María Luisa received 27 years. Their endings carried a haunting sense of poetic justice. Delfina, the primary architect of the terror, died on October 17, 1968, in a bizarre prison accident. While in the yard, construction workers above accidentally dropped a heavy load on her head, crushing her instantly. María del Carmen had already succumbed to cancer years earlier. María Luisa descended into madness in prison, tormented by paranoia. She died alone in her cell on November 19, 1984, her body discovered a day later, partially eaten by rats. María de Jesus, the youngest, served part of her sentence and was released sometime in the late 1970s or 1980s. She reportedly remarried, faded into obscurity, and died of natural causes in the 1990s. The case shocked Mexico, exposing deep corruption in law enforcement and society. Follow for more interesting true-life story on Payback Chronicles.